septic plans. We do have one that from Bob Sheehan when we get to it later, but not actually new design. So if we go through what we have, Colleen's timesheet is a normal 70 hours for the 2 weeks. Are you okay with that, Lee?
Yes. Yep. No problem. Thank you.
I am okay too, Colleen. So that's, oh, and here it's Herb.
Hello.
How are you, Herb? We just started. The first item was Colleen's timesheet, 70 hours. Are you okay with it, Herb?
I'm fine with it.
I am too. So all three of us approved that, Colleen.
Okay.
The next one is the money turnover. It is $285 total, 185 for the Board of Health permits, and then 100 for licenses totaling 285. Lee and Herb, are you both okay with that?
Yes.
Yep. All set.
I am too, Colleen, so that's approved by all three of us.
Okay.
The next one is, I do not have bills payable. Can someone read that? That's a quill for bills payable, and it looks like I didn't copy that. Is there someone that can read it for us?
Yes, I can read it. Just a moment. I've got it coming up here. It's Quill, Manila Folders, $36.99.
I'm okay with that. Herb and Lee?
Yes.
Lee?
Yep. All set. Thank you.
And so all three of us are. I'm going to digress. Meeting minutes for March 15th. Herb, you put some changes. I put a couple changes. I'm okay with that. Herb and Lee?
So am I.
Lee?
Yep. All set.
All
Yes.
three of us approved that, so that's okay, Colleen.
Okay.
Next one is a hauler's permit for complete septic. Is that a renewal, Colleen?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm okay with that then.
Yes.
Lee?
Yep. Yep.
Hey,
Yep.
all three of us are good with that, Colleen. That's a.
Okay.
The next one is there's three for Union Mart, Rightwise doing business as Union Mart. I've got license to sell retail food, license to sell milk and cream, and tobacco permit. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I am too, Colleen. So with all three that we're okay with.
Okay.
The next one is temporary food permit for Immaculate Heart of Mary. And that's for a one-day license, April 23rd, the pulled pork dinner. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Yep.
And I am too, Colleen, so all three of us.
Okay.
I don't have anything. On my next one, it says Lot 12 Bachelor Street, sign off for building department. I didn't have any backup with that.
The water test for Andy Marion, that.
Oh, I looked at that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. I didn't see it, but if you checked it out, it's all good.
Okay. So that all
Okay, so
three
I
of
can
us said
sign his, I
yes.
can sign his paperwork then. Okay.
Yeah.
For you guys.
The next one is Bob Sheehan application for a septic tank and D-box at 159 Chicopee Street. I've got an issue with it. The Title V says that doesn't say it's an illegal garbage grinder, but since the system was never approved for that, none are, then it's a bootleg garbage grinder. The Title V says that it should be taken out. but this permit doesn't say that that's part of it. And my feeling would be that we not issue the permit until the garbage grinder is up. Lee, is it already installed?
159 Chicopee Street, there's
Yeah.
a new tank and a new distribution box in the ground.
So
But they should be, obviously, pulling a, plumbing permit, to have it done, removed professionally. I believe that's how we do this in the past.
right, that's required. What we could do, since we could not do the certificate of compliance part, since the thing's already in the ground, we could issue the permit but not sign off on the completion until the garbage disposal is taken out. We could do it that way.
I would favor
I
that.
think that,
So Colleen, is that, Lee, you could support that too?
oh, for sure. Yeah, that's the only way to go.
Okay, Colleen, could you let, who did the job? Maybe just
Greg.
tell Shannon.
Greg
Maybe.
Everson.
Okay, or Everson, either one of them, saying that we're not going to sign off on the completion until the permit is pulled for the removal of the grinder and it's taken out.
I'll tell them both, yeah.
Okay, so with the three of us approved the permit, but we said we will not do certificate of compliance until the garbage disposal is removed.
Okay.
Okay, I think I saw Gary Toth is here. He's muted, but we could talk to him. I've got it. Look, are you there, Gary?
How about now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Are Herb and Lee and Colleen, are you all set with Gary?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, good,
Can hear
good.
him.
How's everybody doing tonight?
I'm doing well.
Good, good, good. We're back over at 81 Pleasant Street. And we're looking to put a well in there behind the building. And we can't find where the old Leachfield septic was.
You said you did or you did not?
Well, we didn't dig it up yet, but there's no paperwork on it. So I guess when it was decommissioned back in '96, when they put the ejection pump in, we don't have any paperwork on where it was situated behind the building, the existing house.
I talked on a perk test. I talked to Alan Katowitz,
Yes.
and Alan asked me if the existing well was still active and had never been decommissioned as the paperwork says it's been decommissioned. And Alan said by the time you came in to talk to us, Gary, you would know the answer as to whether you've got a well on that property that's functional right now.
Well, unfortunately, you're right about a couple of things. One, I did not look into it yet to see if it's still workable and pump it out and get it tested. Don't know that. There is a 6-inch casing that goes down in that existing shallow well. Now, I don't think it's a shallow well anymore. I don't know. I'm not a well guy, but we're looking into that with a couple of people. But we were more concerned, Alan and I, if we could house that existing well, if it is workable and water is good, can we put it in the building? leave it exactly where it is and go around it. No, we'd be in the building. Is that possible? That's the first question before we start about where the old leach field was, I guess. So I know it makes much sense to leave it in the building, but depending on where it's situated, where it ends up in the building, it could be an issue leaving it there, number one, for me and my. But if it's workable, and I don't need a lot of water for just one bathroom in a sink, I have to get all the testing done on it first, obviously. So that's the first procedure. There's no paperwork
But-
that either in the town
Okay,
hall.
pardon me. How can we know that well? We can't find the old septic system. How do we know the proximity of one to another?
We don't,
I'm
correct.
following.
Unless we dig it up, dig the backyard up, right?
I mean, at some point, we need that separation from the two, and we need proof somehow.
Well, if the existing well is operable, if the water is good, and we have an injection pump now across to the sewer, do we need that delineation of how far away they're from each other still?
It's an interesting question that when you look at you think, Gary, that the sewer tie-in was in 96? That's what I think you said.
That's what Dave DeRocha said. He's got no paperwork on where it's located, the existing septic and leach field. But when they turned over into the ejection pump to the sewer across the street, when it was decommissioned, they don't have any paperwork on where it was in the back of the house.
Yeah, so you've got something that Lee, in answer to your question,
Yeah.
is they certainly have regulations on how far from a leach field, but what does that mean when you say the location of a leach field that hasn't been used in 25 years? And I'm not sure
Yeah,
I'm not sure it's the same answer.
And it would have been a different answer in 96 than now, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Probably.
Sure.
And in fact, if I were guessing, I would have guessed that the existing well probably would have been located in a spot that was as far as they could have gotten it away from the septic system. That's what I would have guessed. But if you were to put it in the building, my concern is having a well in a building with a gravel floor, and how do you make sure that whatever is happening in the building or a gasoline or anything that leaks in there doesn't go in the well. And the other, when I was talking to Alan, is whoever thinks it through ought to be putting it in a way that you can maintain the well and pull that pump.
Right. The pump right now, the pump is not in the casing. So someone came in and I'm assuming it was a shallow well way back, and then they put 6-inch casing in. How deep, we don't know.
Yeah.
And the pump is outside, so you have two PVC pipes going down into the top of the casing, and they got a cap on it. So the pump is outside the casing, so it's not down below. So what that mean? I don't know what that means. So
Yeah, it means it's at least it's a very high static water, but it could still be a shallow well. In fact, that pipe could go into a little gravel packed area because the water table is so high. And in that case, we don't allow shallow wells. We don't allow any new shallow wells.
So if I take the cap off and see how deep that is, because right now it's concrete. So the casing goes down about 4 feet from the ground level, 3 feet, 4 feet, and it's all concrete. So the casing is in concrete. How deep it goes, we don't know. And then pumps on top of the concrete. So nothing's exposed to a shallow well. So that's why I believe it's not a shallow well anymore. But how deep is it? I don't know. Because they're not getting surface water. It's down below the concrete. So
it sounds to me, Gary, like you, unless we right here, if Herb and Lee both say, no, we don't want to have any part of that,
Correct.
allowing you to put that or keep using the well if it's a good well. If
Right.
if we give you that answer tonight, then
Mhm.
you don't have to come back to us with anything other than a location for the new well. But
Right.
if the three of us say, we'd be open to that, then you'd have to do some research and come back to us.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Herb and Lee, what are your thoughts?
Well, is this a commercial venture, or maybe it doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential? I guess what matters is the quality of the water, number one. But maybe we have to hire Connecticut Valley or Cushing's or somebody to be our guide, tell us what we have here, and then hire whomever to do a chain of command water test, if in fact it is not a shallow point.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking to Cushing, Lee, and Henshaw and those guys. So that's what I'm doing. If first of all, if you allow it, maybe in the garage. If we don't allow it in the garage, to me, a concrete floor in the garage. Now it's mostly storage. There's only one vehicle going in and out of a 3-bay garage. So I would, if I kept it, if you allowed it in the garage, I'd put a berm obviously around the top of that so-called well now, so nothing can leak into it, a concrete encased. But I'm just looking to see which way I should spend my money, I guess. Do I go in the back and find out what a leach field was? Or do I leave there and get the water tested in the existing well? Which way do I go? I'm just trying to get some bearings from you guys. What you think is, I guess you guys are okay with.
Yeah, I'm not trying to waste your money on this, of course. I just want to protect everybody going forward, as you do as well.
Right.
I guess if Cushing's or Henshaw can look over your shoulder and tell you it's a deep well, not a point, that'll answer a lot of questions, and then they do a water quality test, and then we figure out, and then you can tell us, or somebody can tell us, the separation from the sound system piping to the well, and if it can be in the garage, is it going to have like a foot above the floor of the garage, so that it can't be surface level, of course, because then the spill could theoretically breach the cap or something. I mean, I'm just trying to think without being an idiot, worst case scenario here. You know what I mean?
Well, one of the things that, as you talk it through, Lee, is, and again, the well, if I personally don't have a problem with putting the well in there as long as it's engineered in a way that it can be maintained. What I do have concerns is how someone tells us that the seal was done properly where it goes into the bedrock, and when the thing is low, covered with concrete or surrounded with concrete, and say, why was that done? But again, the first question is, Lee, if you and Herb say, I don't have a problem with letting a well be there, then Gary can do the other work if he chooses. But if we say, no, we're never going to allow you to do that, then it's just a waste of money.
Yeah. I mean, I recall, and I don't know how many years ago, I believe we let somebody, and it was residential, put the well in their house in the cellar, despite the obvious headaches that will come forth at one point in time for maintenance issues. And your point, Dick, is of course valid. If you've got 160 feet of pipe going down this well, and they have to work on it, how are they going to get that out of that location in a workmanship-like manner, which is not going to compromise that system? We start pulling holes out of the ground, 1.5 inch plastic hose, you need so much height prior to getting a curve on it. And you know, it may not be a concern now, but it will be at some point down the road. Just thinking forward and thinking out loud. I'm not a well guy. I'm just talking this thing through for everybody to tell me I'm wrong and give me another solution here.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lee, 100% on that. And that was one of my questions to people talking without talking to a well guy is if they get a machine in there, how do they get a machine? Can't. The building's around it. So, but I think if the well is deep enough and the amount of water that I'm going to use, which is very little, people I talking to Henshaw, so it's different until I get a hold of them, but how much you're not going to use a lot. So it's one thing, and I agree with you, it has to be clean water. So I get all that. I'm going, I don't know I'm just trying to get a bearing. Where do I go with this? I mean, for everybody's, make everybody happy and myself. So I like to put it in the back myself. I'm not sure if how old that septic is in leach field. Can we put it back there behind the building, the new well? Can't go to the right of the building because it's all wetlands back there. So I'm kind of stranglehold a little bit until we find out where leach field was or go with the existing well. So I know we're going round and round, and I apologize, but I'm just trying to trying to get an idea. And I agree with everybody what they're saying. I just don't know. I think the well thing that is first, maybe, and then go from there, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if the leach field was abandoned in '96, Wally Boy was living by himself for a good number of years after his wife passed away. I don't know if we need to, if we leave the well where it is, then are we just seeking a water quality test? Water's good. Do we then say we need to figure out whether it's a shallow point or shallow point first?
I think you'd have to find out what it is. But I'll ask the question a different way. When I looked at the site, although Alan told me he would go and see if he could poke around and find a line going out of the house, an old line. But as I looked at it and I try to remember what's there, I think that the septic system is off to the right as you're looking at the property. It's the only spot that looks kind of dryish and highish. And I think it's there. But let's say that Gary couldn't use the well that's there. That by the time you go and try to figure out what it is that's there and whether it's sealed and it was supposed to be abandoned, what if Gary said, that really is the safest place to put a well, and I want to put a new one, and I want to put it inside the building and really abandon this old well and be done with it? Would we let him do that? And my feeling is, I think it's the safest place to put the well from an environmental standpoint, but someone's got to engineer it properly to be able to maintain it. But Herb, would we let him do that?
Well, I think we need a consult with the well person, with a driller first, as to what actually exists. The second thing, and this is facetious, so you can forget about it, a retractable roof would solve the issue of getting pipe out of there at some point in the future. If you could go up through a hole in the roof, if you engineered that in there. And I'm not suggesting that you do it. I like the idea that perhaps this is the safest place on the property to have a well, given that there's wetlands close by, that there is a leach field close by somewhere. This may be the single best place to have a well, whether it's the existing one or whether there needs to be a new one.
Oh, it looks like there's two of us, Gary, that would say you could entertain that. Lee, are you on board too to say go ahead and take a look at it? We definitely entertain this?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just kicking around a bunch of pieces that don't connect together to try to make sense of it without blowing a lot of somebody else's money, while keeping the safety aspect of clean drinking water at the forefront of this whole thing.
So you have an answer, Gary. The answer is that we would let you put it in that building, and it's up to you to find out what you want to do right now.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. I think that's the way to go myself, is to get some intel on that and see what it's about. And then do this first with a well guy, and then pump all the existing water, if it can pump any water out of there, and get some fresh water coming and get it tested. I think that's the best way. If it does that, who knows? It could be 10 feet down. How do we know, right? So
We don't.
if it's that shallow, then we can, like Herb said, we can just put the pump right back in and leave it in the building anyway, but put a new pump in, put a new system in there. So you're kind of all right. The leach field, I think the leach field is behind the house to the right, like you said, Mr. Bombardier, because it's the flattest, driest, looking like hay, like it's been built up, and there's no roots there, there's no trees there.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I think that's to me, that'd be where it is right now. But so go dig around back there, and putting a new well anywhere back there could be, when they work out. So,
But you just said something, Gary. I just want to make sure that you know that I'm not on board. That where you say, "Oh, if it's a shallow well and it's good water, we're all set." I'm not going to be on board. I can be convinced,
yeah,
but at this point, with that kind of question around there, and the fact that we don't allow shallow wells to go in anymore,
right.
that if that's what you've got there, I'll be hard to be convinced to say, okay, let's let that shallow well go and
No.
be happy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wouldn't leave a shallow well either. I would put the money into putting an artesian, casing right in the same spot if it has to be. I think you're right. You can't take full around with a shallow well.
But what Herb said is interesting, because I had my well pulled, and they came in with a pickup truck with a drum on the back, and I would say that the total height that they used was they actually wound everything up. My hose ended up winding around a drum that was about 5 feet in diameter, and I would guess the total height was about 10 feet. So if you dealt with that with a garage door that's high enough for that pickup truck to get in, and you had headspace over it, I think what Herb is talking about is right. You design it so that it's maintainable and go there from there. But I think Lee is right that the next thing is for you to get and what Herb said is to get a well guy in there and see what we've got and see what you're proposing, Gary.
Okay, sounds great. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. When's the next meeting, Colleen?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, I will get on that and have some information for you guys to look over in 2 weeks. Hopefully it works out.
Okay.
Good. Great.
Appreciate everybody's time.
Have a good night, Gary.
Take care. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
So our next ones that we have on our list, 150, they're Title Fives. And I'm not doing them as a group because I've had a question. We've talked about 159 Chicopee Street, but this would be the Title V. Lee, are we set to receive that one? That was a conditional pass with what we've just discussed.
Yes.
Herb, are you all set with that?
Yes.
153 South Street, Greg Everson passing. Are we set with that, Lee?
We are.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I'm going to jump to 26 Cold Hill Drive. For some reason, I thought mine said it was Cold Hill, but but maybe Cold Hill Drive. Greg Everson passing. Are we set with that, Lee?
We are.
Okay. The one I've got a question.
Dick,
Yes,
I think it is Cold Hill. I don't believe that's Cold Hill Drive.
I thought when I read the Title 5, and I just caught it just now, I thought it said Cold Hill.
Yeah.
We we're
That
in the back.
property
Pardon?
faced onto Cold Hill. All the way in the
We were
back.
Yeah, that dead end street there, Herb, behind you. That's where we were last week.
But there are houses between and other properties between 26 Cold Hill and the street Cold Hill Drive. That 26 Cold Hill Drive doesn't back, that's listed as Cold Hill Drive, does not back onto Cold Hill Drive, I don't believe.
Let me get my street list. I got it right here.
Okay. And unless there is a small strip of land between the existing houses on Cold Hill Drive that belongs to this property.
Let's see, Cold Hill Drive.
And unfortunately, I didn't copy the Title 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you go down past your house, Herb, then that left-hand turn,
Yes.
dead end, that's where we were. So to the very end, and of course another right-hand turn. And this was the second to last house on the right-hand side of the street, facing, well, nothing but woods, but it would, the next street over would have been, I guess, Route 202, way, way, way over.
Yeah, so it's facing the south or southeast or east, southeast maybe.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the wrong property, I believe. I believe I was thinking of the property with the very old septic system that was for sale by the real estate agent right across from Town Hall. And perhaps this is a totally different house on Cold Hill Drive, which the house faces west, and then to the east, it's woods behind the house, and it goes out toward
Hammer Street or something.
yeah, I'm not sure where it goes out to. So
Okay, so it is Cold Hill Drive.
Cold Hill Drive. I'm sorry, excuse me, everyone. I was thinking of different house.
But you bring up a good point, Herb, because that piece of property that has a septic system on it has never been built. When we went there with Lori McCool, there were certain requirements that we specified the owner to do.
Yeah.
And to the best of my knowledge, none of that has been done yet. So if I'm not at a meeting at some point in the future and this comes up, just a word to the wise, it's not ready to go.
Yeah.
The distribution box and the tank were completely full of liquid.
Yes. Yes.
And
They
should have all been bone dry.
Yes.
So
Plus, the way we left that, we left it that the owner can or doesn't have to do anything. It's just that he can't use that system for a new house there. That's the way it was left.
Right. And my impression was, and again, it could just be my poor memory, that they were selling the property with a system in place ready to roll. But that's not the case.
They are, and somebody called me on this, I think this last week. And, cause that's what it says, that they're advertising, that there's a system there to be used. And I told them, you can't, yeah, what you said at the meeting, that they can't use it.
Okay,
Oh, that
so we just have
becomes
to-
a legal issue with the owner and the buyer and the real estate person.
right.
The last one that I have is 7 Sherwood Drive. And that one is a report from Greg Everson. I actually talked to Greg about it. But what we have, according to the Title V, is a system that could be 59 years old. It's got a 1,000-gallon septic tank that's kind of rotted. Both the inlet and outlet baffles are gone. Got an old-fashioned distribution box that doesn't have a drop through it. It's the whole inlet holes and outlet holes are at the same elevation. It's also rotted away. It's filled with solids and connected directly to that rotted away distribution box are 2 clay, I guess the septic trench lines, one of which is 6 feet long and one of which is 8 feet long. And the Title V says that it conditionally passes that it needed a new septic tank and a new distribution box, but that the distribution box should be carefully replaced because the clay tiles touch it directly, and it's very small for a 2-bedroom house. My question with this is, I don't think we should grant, I talked to Greg about when he says that and he's got solids in the box and there are 6 feet of pipe in one and 8 feet in the other. I said, I would believe in the last 59 years someone destroyed the leach field, but he said that's not up to him. He didn't see any water flooded, and so all he can say is it wasn't flooded. But my feeling is that you can't possibly give a permit for replacing that distribution box without taking, the code says you have to have 2 feet of level pipe coming out of the box. So that gets rid of 1/3 of the 6 feet that's left and 1/4 of the 8 feet. So you've destroyed between, 1/3 and 1/4 of a non-existent leach field. I don't understand how we can just say, let's give a permit for this and let it fly.
Has this home been occupied?
Lee, that's probably,
I believe there is one person living there now. Let me see. This is, 7 Sherwood. This will tell me. Give me a sec, please. I'm back to the street list here. Okay, 7. Okay, so this is or was the current property.
yes.
So probably, roughly speaking, probably at one point in time, 5 people were living there.
5?
Parents. Yeah. But we may be going back, or maybe, I don't know, 18 odd, 20 odd years.
Oh, I see.
And since then, Mr. Kern has passed away. Mrs. Kern was living there alone. Children had moved out, of course. So there's been one, as far as I know, and I don't know for sure, there's been one person living there probably for the last, 10 odd years. But obviously, the math on the size of the field does come into question as far as how much of that system is lasting. Maybe it's coming off the toe of the slope off the top of East Street, where a lot of the houses there built their SAS on the bottom of the hill facing Acrebrook and Sherwood Drive. There's that big band of sand throughout there, which may explain why this thing has lasted as long as it has.
In fact, maybe this is the one that when you go by there all winter long and all you do is smell sewage right in that spot, maybe this is the one that's the reason that 14 feet of leach facility hasn't failed is because it's coming right out to the brook somehow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely possible.
But my concern is, how can you possibly get someone in with a machine and be digging up next to a 6 foot line that's not even a line, it's loose clay pipe, and an 8 foot loose clay pipe? How in the world can they do that without destroying that? And in my mind, if there was ever a time when we're saying we should be upgrading a system as a property sale, this is one. This is like the worst one I ever saw.
So why does the code not preclude giving this a conditional pass?
The Title V inspection, if you look at it, Herb, is not a very strong document. It doesn't let you go back and say, is this grossly poorly designed? Is it grossly small for the current use? It doesn't do that. It says, in fact, in terms of, for instance, a septic, a cesspool, it literally says if it's not blocked up, it can be filled right up to the bottom of the pipe. And you say, it's okay, let it go. It really is not a very strong document.
Okay, so my sense is if the Board of Health is really interested in its mandate of preserving health in the town of Granby, we shouldn't receive this. We should say this just doesn't meet the smell test, if you will, for a system to continue.
But we're not even required to receive it. That's the problem. All that happens, the way Title V is written, all that the inspector has to do is mail it.
So you're saying we have no jurisdiction over this?
Oh, yeah. We cannot give the permit for the repair. That one we absolutely have total control over.
Got it. Okay. Well,
just as an FYI, Wayne Walton has replaced those two components. I don't understand how it got there, because Greg Everson was doing the Title V, and then about 8 days ago, Wayne Walton called up because he had replaced both pieces
without a permit.
I don't know who pulled that paperwork.
Well, we haven't seen it.
There was paperwork there.
We haven't seen it. Colleen, have you seen the trench
No.
permit? So we don't have a.
I haven't seen any, no.
So
anything.
we've got a thing that it's installed without a permit. We've done it without the trench permit that's required to install it. And my feeling is I don't know, Lee, if you're the guy, if you've inspected it and said, okay, it's okay, fill it back up. But I think our board is not happy with what this particular one is done. What kind of
No,
position are you in?
No, I totally understand the position because this, and I don't know how I missed this, but we had the same scenario on Amherst Road where there was a house that was being repaired for a sale on a single clay line, and the septic tank replacement was going to chop off about 30% of that single clay line going out, and they ended up doing a repair perk on that side. I think it was Bob Sheehan, and redid the system. How this one got by me as far as the length of the pipe in the ground, I don't have an answer. I'm completely at fault for not catching this from the get-go.
So have you signed off on this? The part that you've been, I don't know where the water table is, but if you ended up doing a perk test, it's interesting that Greg Everson told me the new owners expect to be having to do a repair perk. Now, if Greg Everson's not involved, of course, I can be all sorts of, conspiracy oriented and saying, why would you get a new guy involved? Especially when the old guy says, you really need to replace the leach field properly. But what are we going to do? What are we going to do right now? That's the issue. Have you inspected this and told Wayne Walton he's all set and he's all done and the owner's all set, Lee? Is that what's happened?
In a nutshell, yes. But I was not aware that there was another conversation that Greg was having, telling you, if I heard you correctly, that the new owner expects to do work on the system.
No, what happened is I called Greg this morning and said, Greg, this is coming up tonight. And when I read this, that I'll be pushing to say this is wrong. And why, when you just say, Greg, this is a conditional pass and replace these two items. And I was telling Greg, what I'm going to be at least pushing is saying, Greg, you've got a license. You're saying this is okay. Title 5 doesn't even say that Lee has to be out there. And if you want to be the guy with your name on it saying, I said it's okay, guys, just let her rip. The only problem that Greg did put is he said, you better be really careful at replacing this distribution box because you're going to wreck the little leach field that's there. So
I completely hear what you're saying. I can't comprehend that he let, apparently he did, Wayne Walton put this in with this knowledge and didn't give either Wayne or myself a heads up or a, wait a minute, guys, we need to get further into this prior to doing any work. That part is more than a little disturbing to me.
Well, one of the things going back, Lee, to in your defense is when Wayne a long, long time ago sat before us and said, hey, when you go in the ground and find out what you're seeing isn't what you expected, do you call the Board of Health and said, hey, this is a problem? And he said, yep, I understand it. I'm supposed to call. And my guess is he didn't call you and say, hey, Lee, there's no leach field here.
No, that wasn't anything to do with the conversation.
Yeah.
They were, hooked up with the standard firm codes like everybody uses. But I just can't, I can't understand, Greg's stance on this inspection and the potential outcome, because it reminds me a little bit of the Pleasant Street issue that we had with Mr. Matthews some years ago, where he's putting himself at a great deal of exposure here financially to end up eating the installation of an SAS.
That's right.
On this property.
But in this
litigation.
In this particular case, I think, I don't, on an installer league that knows you're supposed to have a permit, that knows you're supposed to have a trench permit, that does it anyways, at what point do we hold him accountable and say, this isn't good enough? It's not this time. We don't just walk away. This isn't right.
Can I ask just a simple question?
Sure.
Yeah. What can we do? Number one. Number two, this fellow, and I don't know him and I don't know his name, can also be notified that he's not welcome to work in Granby anymore. But what can we do?
What we can do is not give the certificate of compliance, which means that the system can't be used.
Right. So the homeowner is screwed then. The person
who still owns it.
I see. This hasn't been sold yet.
I don't think so, but I don't know that.
Whomever his name is on the deed is screwed.
Right. Unless they go to the installer and say, installer, you installed this without a permit and you installed it without a trench permit, 2 permits. And now the system isn't accepted.
And what is their recourse at that point? A new SAS? What are they going to do?
I think the new SAS is the thing that what could cause all sorts of problems is if we ended up with a high water table and now the system is in the wrong elevation. That causes a lot more trouble. But we don't know what it is. The proper thing is to say you need a perk test for a new SAS.
Right. So somebody just took it in the ear here. In fact, a number of people have.
Yeah, I feel partly responsible for this. This one completely got by me. I don't know how or why. Usually I try to make pretend that I'm sharper than I am at times, and in this case, I completely failed in my my duties to the board, and I apologize for my activities.
I don't think we need a mea culpa here. We've got a problem with an installer who,
Well,
we've got a
right,
rogue
but-
installer here. That
well, we
seems
have a
to
roof
me,
installer as well as a I don't know how the town of Granby can correct some of the language of or the responsibilities of Title V inspection. If somebody comes into town and does a bunch of quickie Title V's, in this scenario, it's going to be a repeating problem. And as Dick pointed out, whether any one of the three of us are invited on site is that it's an invitation. I don't think they have to have us there at all.
They don't, other than if we require it. And although well, it's,
So I guess I'm curious about the comment about the new owner needing, knowing that they need work right away, which makes no sense to me at all, because if they're buying the property for $300,000 and they don't believe they're planning on spending another $18,000 in the front yard for a new SAS, because I would think the bank would say, you know, it's good to go. You're not buying something on a fire sale, a discounted price, to throw more money back into it. If you saw a property and there was a hole in the roof, you would hopefully have the building inspector or whomever, the bank inspector, say that fix that hole in the roof, and then we can get you, a new roof, and we'll get you mortgage. But in this situation, they just replaced components and chopped what was left of a small system even smaller. Family of 3 or 4 people move in, and all that can happen is that it either ends up in the kitchen sink or running down the street.
yeah. I think I go back to what Herb was saying, is that I don't think, Lee, that you need to be saying, hey, installer, you've got a license to be installing here. Did you, in fact, follow these rules and get a permit? And did you get the trench permit, which is legally required? Did you do all those things before I go there? That it's his responsibility. It's his responsibility to be saying, hey, Lee, this Title V said, I probably can't even install this D-box that because of what this Title V says, that you can't tell. It's him. He's the one with the license.
correct.
And that from the Board of Health standpoint, the Board of Health can only say, look at, you didn't follow the rules and we're in trouble. You're in trouble here. And it's the reason Bobby Sheehan filled out the paperwork that we just talked about for whatever it was, 159 Chicopee Street. It's because that someone has to be thinking about this. And this guy didn't do it. And he's the guy. And the people that own the property is, as Herb said, they can bring them to court. Hopefully, someone's going to act responsibly and it'll get done without being in court. But
It's going to cost someone a lot of money.
yeah,
I think we should move on.
so the answer is we're not approving this. There is no permit.
Right.
Colleen, I guess what the answer from this Board of Health is that we've said we've put it that there's been that we're not accepting that this is the proper repair for this, to inform Wayne Walton that he's put the system in without a installation permit for that system and without a trench permit, and the board's not going to approve it. And that somebody, whoever his client is, has to be talking about doing a repair permit for an SAS for a leach field.
I think
Okay.
that Walton and the owner, whomever the owner is, need to come and see us in 2 weeks.
I think that's problem. I could accept that. How about you, Lee?
Yeah, we need to obviously air our laundry on this thing, or their laundry, or whatever, and figure out how we got here. But it also bugs me a little bit that the permit at 159 Chicopee Street talks about a garbage grinder, which was put in by, we assume, the homeowner or somebody. But the same, I don't know how the chain of communication works, but the same thing. It went right past me without comment or courtesy, whatever you want to look at it, that didn't know it was even there.
Yeah, it's
and
in the
again,
Title V.
So I'm going to have to be extra vigilant going forward with these guys, because the tank and D-box are in the ground, and the garbage disposal is still in place.
That's
So
right.
I guess technically what I should have done was just, if I had been aware of it, done some arm twisting until I get a copy of the permit and maybe a receipt from a plumber that it's been pulled out, then and only then do we allow the installation and the sign off.
Well, that part we haven't signed off. So that's the protection that we have, is
Yeah.
that we're not going to sign off.
Right. So, I mean, the homeowner at 159 will, I'm sure, do the right thing. Sherwood Drive is a whole nother can of worms, but it's a can of worms that was created on that side of the fence.
So I think Herb's right. You get the owner and the installer, and again, the guy with the license is the guy that's supposed to know the rules. But
Yeah, and maybe if Mr. Everson has made that comment, and maybe he has to be on board too, to help us understand what definitions they're referring to here.
well, when he talked to me, he said, well, the code says I don't see any water backing up, just because there's solids up until the 6-foot pipe and the 8-foot pipe, and it's loaded with solids. I looked at those little pipes, and my job is just, if there's no water in there, I just say, hey, it's too small, but there's no water there, so it's working. And I think he's right, but it requires the Board of Health to be doing exactly this, saying, hey, this isn't a working system.
Right. So he's going by strict definition and ignoring, and I'm not an engineer, but it appears to be ignoring a common sense determination that when you've got 12 or 14 feet of clay pipe, a 3 or 4 bedroom house, there's no way in the world but that by today's standards, it's going to be functioning.
So the answer is we get them in. We don't, they have to know it's not going to get a certificate of compliance. It's not going to be able to be occupied. And that, as Herb says, what can the Board of Health do? That's what the Board of Health can do.
Yep.
Okay,
I gotcha.
we're repeating ourselves now. I suggest we move on.
So next one, air sensors. I did check on them. I've got one. I'm bringing this one down to Chris Martin. We are now in a spot that John Sullivan at the two schools is my contact. He's going to put them in. Andrew Parker will do it, and McDuffie. I've got to talk. I do have to talk to Micheline Turgeon for out at New Ludlow Road. That Chris said that he thinks that Mish knows a bunch of people over in that corner. That all that happens, we just have to mount the sensors upright so the rain doesn't come in. The wires have to be going upwards into them. The transformers are waterproof. All we have to do is plug them in and be near a Wi-Fi signal, and these babies are ready to go. So we're ready.
I would only make one comment. Multiple people, different people doing these installations is, in my simplistic view, a recipe for failure. I think we need someone who is overseeing all of the installations.
I certainly could take it there, since there are only 6 of them. I certainly could take a look at them.
And I think that's a great idea. Okay.
Yep. That makes perfect sense, Herb.
Fee schedules. I had a couple comments. One was on of course, I scribbled over it, so I can't read it. It says something deferred percolation, that there are actually 2 things that go there. One of them is the out of season perk test water table determination. That's the time when we go back. So we did the perk test, and now we go back to do a water table determination. My suggestion is that gets added, and it's $100. And the other is that deferred thing is actually perk test extension depots. And that is correctly $100, but that's what that fee is for. My other comment,
Instead of deferred percolation?
yeah, that it's actually a perk test extension depots.
Depots. Okay, got it.
The other is one that my suggestion is, since where we've got repairs, major repairs include perk tests. If you look at the replacement of 2 components at $75 each, that hits your $150, and this thing includes a perk test. I'm just wondering if we should just be saying that whether it's a repair or a new construction, since the repair includes the perk test and the new construction carried another $200, that we just make all of those either a repair or a new, the $200. Since the repair requires Lee to go out on a perk test. But those are my comments. The rest, I'm very happy with what Herb has got. The only thing also, building department gas permits not more than. that little slider, a little thing that you have down at the very bottom, Colleen, that
Yeah.
says additional inspections, were those additional inspections supposed to be associated with food service establishments? Going back for
No.
return inspections? No, you
That-
have one. You have one up there.
Yeah, yeah, this, I don't know, this was on the old one, on, you know, gas permit, it was kind of in the middle, like it was for the Board of Health, but the building department, that's their thing. I just keep it on there, that's not really ours.
Yeah, but the gas inspector reports to us, right? The plumbing
No.
inspector is the gas inspector, I
Just the
thought.
just the plumbing. But a lot of people ask me about the fees, and then, so I just kept it there to refer to, but it's really through the building inspector, the gas.
Do you guys, Herb and Lee, do you have any thoughts on what I just said?
I guess as long as it's, normal, normal, acceptable trips back and forth. And what I'm referring to specifically is I've been to 141 East Street for 3 different repair perks, which is excessive. The first was an engineer that was fired. The second was Alan Weiss on the same location. And then the third was Alan Weiss on the front of the house. And, I don't mind doing it, of course. But I don't know if there's a way of going after excessive problem sites, I should say.
We didn't create the problems. We're responding to them. If people have continuing problems or unresolvable problems or difficult problems, and we have to adjudicate it, they ought to pay for it.
Oh, I agree. I just, just a mechanism for letting the board know, if one of us has to go back to the same guy's house for trash 6 times, on a trash complaint, then somehow that homeowner has to, cover the expense at least of the repeated inspections and paperwork that follows it.
Yeah, you actually are looking at 2 different issues, Lee. One of them is the perk test.
Yep.
And if the perk test system covers the fact that sometimes they're easy and sometimes they're hard, then you're getting paid anyways. But if the system takes care of it, then you're okay. Like when I do new constructions, sometimes there are only 2 perks. And so that's $100 that, well, it's more than that. It's $130 that goes into the kitty. And when we chose that number, that's the one, except if they go over 4 perks and they have to pay $50 on addition. But on the repairs, we're not charging for perks at all. So that's one. The other that you talked about was trash. And there's no fees involved.
Well, and I guess my point is that I'm trying to keep the board on the plus side financially. So, remember that house on 116 that had multiple trash issues over and over and over.
Yeah.
And all those, all the inspection fees just get run out. And I'm just trying to do, it's, I guess, not my job, but trying to make sure that we're not running negative money all the time in this department for responding, as Herb said, to something that we didn't create, but were asked to look into it.
So my question would be, let's look at the repairs. So the two options would be to raise the repair rate so that most of them that work right carry the few that don't work right, or don't raise the rate and charge for the individual perks. From my standpoint, raising the rate on all of them is way easier.
I would agree with that for sure.
Herb, what are you thinking?
Isn't that what I did?
No, it stayed on that one. It stayed 150. That's the one that I think we ought to move to 200.
I can't find the email that Colleen sent around right now, so I'm not looking at this right now. The reality is, on most of the charges, we were way behind other towns. And that's what I tried to make a bit of correction to. Not to get us to be the highest, but to make a correction.
And I supported all the things that you did. As I said, the only one was making sure we covered that perk text extension and the out of season perk, because those are two activities that weren't on the list. And as I said, the only other one that I've got a suggestion is to raise the repair to cover what Lee's talking about. But other than that, I think what you did, Herb, is perfect.
Well, I move we accept it then. With your additional
Changes?
comments.
Lee, how do you think?
No, I think that was a lot of good work went into this thing, and I think we should go with it as amended. Yeah.
Okay. Do I hear a second to Herb's motion?
Yes, I will second that.
Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So Colleen, they're accepted, and I think they ought to be immediate. Is that what we're going to say? We're going to just start it right now, or are we going to wait to the fiscal year? When should we do this?
I think we should make it retroactive to 2019.
That's reasonable.
So we'll start at the 1st of April.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So so I'm clear, the first one, the repairs, the single components, that's staying the same,
Right.
75.
The second one goes to 200.
The second one goes to 200. Okay, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, the next thing, Dollar General. Dollar General's permit runs out in a couple days. But
Well,
go ahead, Herb.
I've been driving by and observing those basins, and they're always full.
And I've done it too. Like, I've done it 20, 30 times. They're always full, most of the time about to the same level, but there's definitely mostly full. on both basins.
And in fact, the last time I was there a couple of days ago, it was virtually overflowing.
Overflowing the berm over into the,
No, overflowing the rocks over the rim of the basin.
wow. So the 4-inch outlet wasn't even taking care of it.
I don't believe it was.
From a practical standpoint, my suggestion is we give them 3 more months. Because if we don't do something, they're going to be operating without a permit, and that's going to cause all sorts of trouble. But certainly we've now got the data of since the last 3 months that said never has it not been drained.
Correct. And we're not acting, we're not following through on what we said we were going to do. I'm not saying that we have to follow through on what we said we were going to do, but we should certainly recognize that we're not.
My suggestion,
And I'd like to see that in the minutes.
my suggestion is that we tell them that we've extended the permit for 3 more months, but we now have 3 more. We told them we were going to get the data, and tell them we now have 3 months of data saying that the ponds never drain, and it is, we're ordering them to hire the engineer to do the correction to make sure they're drained per their design. That's what my suggestion would be.
And if they don't do it, then what? You don't have to answer that now. But at some point, there has to be some clout in these dictums. Otherwise, we should stop making them.
Lee, you're silent.
I'm thinking, Herb's point is well taken. Should we be, possibly, I may have brought this up in the past. If I did, I apologize. Should we be checking, with some type of, I don't know how it works, financial, penalties on a daily basis? I mean, whatever we do, I think we have to, and I'm not trying to be, afraid of my own shadow here, but I think we have to, at some point, it'll end up in litigation, and we maybe should consider ceasing town council on this so they can help us bring some clout to the table.
I was supposed to do that. I did the initial talk to him, and then after we did the last time, I did not talk to him.
I was going to bring that up. Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Because we very specifically said that we ought to do that.
Yep, we did.
But I do agree 100%, Herb, that I don't know how to get there, but this organization has, come into town and pretty much listened, but not done a ton of response to our concerns. And I guess we can go back and forth for the next, umpteen years without resolution. But I believe it's not knowing too much that it's purely an engineering issue which has never been properly resolved.
Well,
Well, I would disagree with you, Lee. I don't think we can go back and forth for umpteen years. I think we should either be the Board of Health or not be the Board of Health. If this is a public nuisance, then it's a public nuisance. If they're not going to resolve it, they're not going to resolve it. There's hell to pay then. There should be. And if there's not going to be, then perhaps we need to replace the Board of Health members with people who will follow through and make it happen. And I'm not suggesting, Dick, when I said that you hadn't contacted our consul. I'm making a more general statement there.
No, I think we're all in the same spirit, Herb, and your point is valid. But I can only see in talking with other people in general in other towns, corporation has a pretty cavalier outlook on the particular town it sets up shop in. They appear, and I don't know this for a fact in other towns, but they give the impression that they're going to do things how they see fit, which is frustrating.
No, it shouldn't be frustrating, and they shouldn't do things as they see fit. They should do things as dictated by regulations of the town and the desires of the town. And if they don't want to do that, then they can leave.
okay, all of these are, from my standpoint, these are good philosophical discussions and opinions, but my thought would be that we tell them the truth about what we're doing right now, and to say, we have extended your permit for another 3 months, and we have begun to deal with our town council to find the legal recourse to force you to get rid of this health nuisance. And just tell them that, and then do it.
I thought we told them we were giving them 3 months
Well,
to rectify the problem.
and we said we were going to collect data. So I think what we would say is, we have now collected the data and have not had one single day that those 2 basins were drained out according to their design. The first thing you say that. The second is, we are giving you an additional 3 months to operate, and we have begun the legal recourse to force you to alleviate this public health nuisance. That's what I would do right now.
So when we notified them about the current 3 months, I thought that was copied to town council. Was it?
I don't know. Colleen can tell us that. She may not be able to tell us right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to look. I'd have to look at it. I think so, but
I
have to
think
look
it
at my
was.
list.
Yeah, I think it was as well. Well, let's do it.
Okay, Colleen. So that's what we're going to do. Is
Okay.
we're going to say, one is, we have collected data and found that in the last 3 months. No, but first we say, we gave you a 3-month operating permit, which expires at the end of on March 31st, 2020.
Mhm.
In that permit, at that time, at the time of the issuance, we told you that we would collect data on the performance of the two stormwater basins. in that 3 months, we have not observed a single day when either basin was drained according to their operating design. 3, we are issuing you an operating permit for another 3 months through June 30th, 2022. And 4, we have begun the legal procedures to force you to make the modifications, the engineering modifications, to ensure that these basins operate as designed. And for sure, the town council should get a copy, the building inspector should get a copy, and Chris Martin should get a copy. And the planning board who approved this.
And before you send it out, Colleen, I would like to take a look at it.
Oh, yeah, I'll send it around before I do. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
COVID and other items, for sure the COVID is on the way up. I don't know if you took note of my comments, I think yesterday. We moved out on the state numbers. We've moved out of the gray up into the green. And on the CDC numbers, we went over 100, which puts us into the red area. And if you look at the state numbers, positivity and cases are going up.
And we have recalcitrant people all over our state and country who will not get vaccinated.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't have anything. Colleen, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Lee?
Nothing I can think of right now, thank you.
If that's the case, then we'll say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night.
Night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.